Yeah, so if I'm honest, I hadn't read your book properly, but I
Sure,
started
sure,
skimming
sure.
it in preparation
Yeah, sure.
for this interview, and I understand that it was quite a story in terms of how you found out that you were fostered. If you don't mind, could you share that
No,
with
of
us?
course not. Well, it's really interesting to be actually having this conversation with you now because so in the Easter of 1969, well, actually, if I back up the story, well, I don't know quite how to tell you the story because I could tell it in two different directions. I suppose the first thing that happened, and then actually what happened subsequent to that, is makes the first part quite interesting from the issue of what I think people do when they deal with trauma. Sometimes you just bury it, so you kind of like, I don't know what you're
Yeah,
talking. Do you know what I mean? That
yeah, yeah.
so it's, you know something's happened, but you
But
just decide I'm just not dealing with
yeah,
it. So this would have been early in '69. I don't remember when, Dammy, but early in '69 there came a knock at the door one night, and this woman was going completely crazy outside, and she was demanding that she could see my brother Des. So in the house, there's Des, who's 4 years older than me. There's Maureen, who's 10 years older than me. There's Patrick, who's about 15 years older than me. And then we had a whole load of these little foster children we used to look after. And there would be, they would come in and out the house all the time. And then there was my mother and my father. I say my mother and father, that's who they were up until this point. And so this woman was demanding that she saw Desmond, and my mother said no, slammed the door, got rid of her. And it was a big kerfuffle, and they went back and forth at the front door. And then in the morning, we were having breakfast, and there was just everybody else had gone. There was just me and Des.
yeah,
And I kind of kicked Des under the table and said, "Go on, find out what's going on. What the hell's that? You got someone comes and starts banging on the door, screaming for Des. What's up?" So my mother looked at him, and she kind of braced herself, and she really steeled herself, and she said, "Look, Des," she said, Desmond, she called him, which was obviously going to be bad because she never called him Desmond unless something really tragic happened. She said, "Look, Desmond, last night your mother came to get you, but don't worry," she said, "because you're my adopted child and you cannot be taken away from me."
So at this point, Des had no idea.
Well, again, I think he'd kind of done the same thing I'd done with the trauma, which you kind of know something, because actually, as it turned out, he did know because he had been rejected. He had this hateful story, because again, forgive me messing around with the chronology of the story, but I'm just in the process of making the funeral arrangements for him, so he's just passed away. But interestingly, what I found out was, after a kind of 45-year parenthesis of not seeing him, what I found out was that his mother, who was the woman that was at the door, he tried to make contact with her, and she basically said to him, "Be clear, I don't ever want to see you again. I'm getting married. I've got some other family. You're just not going to be part of them." And then she must have had a change of heart and come back. But now, bear in mind, he's buried this. Exactly. So that's gone down, and it really deep down into him. So when our mother starts saying to him about, "Your mother's come back, but don't worry, it's fine," he had a fit. He storms upstairs. You hear him stamping up the stairs, slams the doors, and he's gone. So it's now myself and my mother.
Yeah.
If I'm really honest with you, the most inappropriate thought came across my mind, and there was nothing I could do with it. It was just there, and it was. I always knew there was something wrong with him. I always knew there was something about this boy that just wasn't quite right. He was different. He's this, that, and the other. And I went through this whole thing in my mind. So I put my hand out to my mother and sort of tried to console her.
Yeah.
And I think I was even probably a pastor at the age of 9. That was the truth of it. And I tried to console this dear lady, and she just burst into tears. And she said, "I'm just so glad it wasn't your mother." And I went, "What?" And she goes, "Because if it was your mother, you would have had to go, because you're not my child, you're my foster child." And I went, "What the?"
Yeah.
Really? What's all that about?
What is this?
Yeah. So fast forward, that year, the foster father died. He died in his sleep, actually. Yeah, I'd gone in to wake him one morning, and he wouldn't wake up. And I went off to play football. Didn't really remember. I was only like 9. I didn't really know. I went off to play football and came back, and everyone was sort of looking all stone-faced in the house, really solemn. And Dad had died. And then quickly after that, in the Easter, Mum had gone into Guildford Hospital, where she'd had this blood transfusion, and the blood transfusion had gone wrong. And she sat us down, and she said to myself and Desmond, "No, that's not." She was in hospital. Sorry, she died because she got air in the blood air in her blood.
Yeah.
But she was going in for some operation. I can't remember what it was. But she knew she was going to die, so she called Desmond. And she said, "So, everything's all organised, everything's been taken care of. You won't want for anything. So Desmond was kind of like, brace himself on what that meant. And this really nice lady called Mrs. Growney, who was a family friend, they had 13 children in that family. It was unbelievable. They used to have dinner in shifts. It was a really amazing house. Literally, they used to have 3 sittings for dinner. It was bizarre.
That is mad.
Yeah, it was mad. And Mrs. Growney was there, and Des, it was my turn to talk to my mum, and then my mother said to me, so Paul, I'm sorry. She goes, but you'll be going to an orphanage, but it's going to be a good orphanage. You're going to like it, but you have to go back to the Crusade of Rescue, which is here in Ladbroke Grove, and then they moved me, as it turned out, to Enfield. So I kind of, it was really weird because although I knew that I wasn't her child, it kind of, the rubber hit the road in a way that I couldn't really explain to you, Damini, when she said you're going to an orphanage.
Yeah.
I just didn't quite know what to do with that, because that was like what other people, I'd seen Oliver Twist not very long, and it was like, what? I couldn't make any sense of that. I was absolutely terrified. So,
and you'd only just found out
this was like 3 or 4 months ago, so I'd only just figured this out. So I'd gone from having a really straightforward, simple existence where I got, I had a bed, I got fed, I had all sorts of other stuff going on, but I went and played football, my friends came around, I had a little girlfriend, and everything was all right. It all made sense, and suddenly the whole thing just went to hell.
Yeah.
So the following day, my mother died. She had this operation that didn't work because of this air bubble, and that she died of that. And then they closed up the house, and my sister, who has an unbelievably sad story to tell, my sister Maureen, she moves, goes off and joins the RAF, and she just escaped. And there was Des and I sitting in the house waiting for the social workers to arrive. So they come, and they took us off to Kenton, actually, over near Harrow. Yeah, and we stayed in Kenton for a little while, in a really unhappy foster. And then my brother went off to, he went away to this boarding school, and then I went off to the orphanage in Enfield. And so I was 10, and that was the last time I saw him until 45 years later.